Thank you very much, Danae, and good afternoon to everyone. I'd like to specifically thank our friends from the neighboring countries of Southeast Asia and also our participants from all over. I presume I'm sorry with this light. Um, and also, thank you very much to Chancellor Fidel Nemenso for gracing the opening portion of our webinar. Um, Mine is just not really a lecture, but just to kick off some points that may have bearing on the discussions here. And given the short time to prepare for this, I just drove basically from online sources, and I hope this helps, no, in bringing about a better uh, perception or appreciation of things that are yet to be discussed in more detail uh, by our speakers. I'll share with you my screen, and I hope you see it. Okay. The title of our webinar is Engaging with China. And there had to be a correction in the previous title, Engaging China, because engaging China as a phrase would denote more of a positive, actual relationship uh, with that country. But engaging with China, I suppose, would detail a lot more of how countries deal with this giant neighbor. So I propose to have a couple of questions. Um, One is how do surveys shape foreign policies of some Southeast Asian countries, a number of which are well represented here by our guest speakers. And of course, the more pedestrian question is, well, do they really matter at all? Do these surveys really matter at all in shaping foreign policy? Um, I begin with a not so late discussion of how our, well, world leader at the moment, the United States, has viewed uh, the perceptions about ASEAN states towards China. And I take from the Congressional Research Service of the US Congress report in 2006, which says, although ASEAN states share common perspectives, each has different relationship with China. Some are more concerned than others that China's rise, which we have seen in many respects, may offer unwanted security or economic challenges. These two things, I suppose, uh, have been a source of, well, different attitudes, even anxieties of some of our neighboring countries. Furthermore, the CRS says some may view China's growing regional position as playing a useful balancing role relative to the influence of the United States, Japan, or India, while others may react to the rise of China by seeking to develop closer relations with the United States or other regional powers. Herein, we see at once that our relationship with China, well, among others, is basically mediated by the influence of the United States in this region, both historical and perhaps in more contemporary times. So the US CRS says, generally speaking, ASEAN states appear to be seeking to maximize the benefits of engagement with China while guarding against the possibility of a more assertive China in the event that engagement fails. These statements were made in 2006, and the developments in the last 15 years perhaps will bear us out in some of the changes, twists and turns in the different attitudes of some of our Southeast Asian neighbors. Another country which has lots of stakes in this region is Japan, which looks at the policy of a free and open Indo-Pacific. And according to one journal article, when former US President Barack Obama showed inadequacy in resolving, well, some issues against China, there were now widespread Southeast Asian apprehensions that then President Donald Trump, his administration, is taking too confrontational an approach to China and becoming too eager to force Southeast Asian nations to choose between the US and China. Some terms were used here by Donald Lee and Lavina Lee about Southeast Asian states' early response, using the terms agnostic, silent, appearing to be more supportive, and this referred to countries Vietnam, Singapore, and Indonesia, and maybe Thailand, uh, and then Indonesia and maybe Vietnam, respectively. Important notes were given to countries Malaysia and my very own the Philippines as being very largely silent. Well, well, as we have seen in some surveys, I suppose there are um, a couple or perhaps more uh, consistently outfits conducting surveys like Pew Research, which we see among its research outputs, this visual, and we can see that the ratings for China being generally favorable could be noted uh, well um, in descending order from Pakistan down to Japan. Japan would be perceived to have generally unfavorable uh, view of China. Southeast Asian countries, Malaysia and Thailand would share 17% view of China. Also, well, South Korea has 42%. The Philippines and Vietnam, I suppose, would have more than majority of their populations, indicating generally unfavorable view of China. Okay, and some details now from that survey by Pew Research, how Asians, no, it's now the people select respondents to these surveys viewed China, India, Pakistan, and Japan, including the United States, and we can see that uh, the Philippines would have about 38% favorable view of China. The least favorable would be again from Japan. Uh, and not only that, the US continues to have generally favorable view among the mentioned countries from South Asia and also Southeast Asia. Now, as to the question of which country uh, is viewed as greatest ally or threat, Indonesia views the United States as an ally, but very low, 28%. Uh, the Philippines, of course, a long-time historical defense and security partner, all together with South Korea, would show general perception of favorability of being an ally towards the United States. Now, the survey also finds, now this time by another more consistent survey maker, uh, the use of Ishak Institute of the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies in Singapore. And this is, I think, fairly recent. And we can see that overall in ASEAN, um, the US favor of the ASEAN countries outweigh that of China. And this would be foremost noted in Vietnam, the Philippines, Singapore, and to a certain extent, Indonesia. Of course, also Thailand. With the list, of course, a mainland country, Laos. Now, the latest, and I suppose very important indication of some views about China, especially in the light of the pandemic uh, and how China has related with some of the Southeast Asian countries. And it's fairly recent. I suppose this is February this year. And I draw from the general statements made from that survey. And we can see that in terms of choice between China and the United States still viewed with much favor at 61.5%. And this statement says China as a choice dropped from 46.4% in 2020 to 38.5, not so big in 2021. Even despite the intensive COVID-19 diplomacy, I would suppose that would be referring to the vaccines given by China, as seen in the region. When respondents from all over were asked how ASEAN should best respond to Beijing and Washington's barbs, the majority still prefer to have ASEAN enhance its own resilience and unity to defend off their pressures. In some researchers, it's indicated that ASEAN also has its own problems towards as regards encouraging more united action, especially in some domestic questions. In the case of Myanmar, especially in recent times, and as you can see in the picture, and this is, I suppose, in Myanmar, rallies about China, perceptions of people on the ground about China uh, is a serious matter. Also, from that Yusuf Ishak Institute findings, Statement 6 of the summary says China remains the undisputed influential economic power in the region, according to 76.3% of the respondents. And let's look how this is viewed. Economic influence uh, of the Southeast Asian countries with China is rated at 72.3, roughly three-fourths of countries. And China continues to be seen as the most influential political and strategic power. That's at 49.1%, which also engenders considerable anxiety over Beijing's strategic clout in the region. But of course, that is also viewed worryingly by a number of countries in terms of the strategic and political influence of China in the Southeast Asian countries. China would be a source of worry of about 49.1%. As we can see here, the rather millennial term, a milk tea coalition of a few countries registering their uh, seemingly negative attitude towards China in some of these mass actions uh, in this country. I think this is Myanmar. And you can see also some of people's movements participating in demonstrating how they view China. For example, Myanmar media has also reported that how China's state-owned Xinhua news agency described what happened in Myanmar recently when the military replaced the elected ministers, not as a coup, but a major cabinet reshuffle. So implying a Chinese support for what is generally termed as a coup. So here the perception is that people think that China was behind the coup. And the perception, of course, is in other places like this, get the Chinese intervention out of some places. Same is shown in countries like also Indonesia, and but that's not towards as regards territorial maritime issues and the South China Sea. or in nearby bodies of water. Uh, but in relation to Muslims, sympathies no, for Muslims in the Uyghur region as an outlying um, region of China, where people seem to have been maltreated by the Chinese state forces. Um, it uh, Last statement from this Yusuf Ishak Institute report says that EU, the European Union, and Japan are the clear front runners for ASEAN's most favored and trusted strategic partners against the US-China rivalry. So attitude towards external actors no, from the region are also seen in the light of a still uh, worried, no, worryingly U.S.-China rivalry hereabouts. Japan still remains the most trusted power in the region, and the EU comes only second, uh, etc. Now, in the meantime, the US makes a surprising turnaround with 18% jump in trust ratings, while China trust deficit is trending upwards. So China is being viewed steadily uh, with increasing distrust. Hereabouts, also in the Philippines, there is a movement by local organizations to assert Philippine sovereign rights, even maritime rights or territorial rights, over certain bodies of water very near our islands in the west. I, of course, here is a seeming summary of its attitude towards major powers. China still uh, viewed with very little 16.5% confidence. As compared to the US at 48.3% and the European Union at 51%, and of course, a nearer neighbor, Japan, 67.1%. In the Philippines, differing attitudes of our officialdom seems to be a concern of our people, and throughout the almost more than 5 years of the presidency of Mr. Rodrigo Duterte, uh, the latest statements would seemingly conflict with his statements in the UN General Assembly about pursuing the arbitral ruling as regards to uh, this West Philippine Sea. But now, of course, is saying that China is a good friend of the Philippines and the Philippines would not go to war against China. And I believe yeah, finally, this is just to highlight what the China's vaccine diplomacy fails. But this is also based on the survey by the Yusuf Ishak Institute, but now summarized here by Nikkei. And so back to that question, do these surveys really matter at all? I believe there is a toss between what officials of countries in the region feel about China. There may be particular incidents where they react negatively towards China and also positively towards China. But then people on the ground, especially perhaps those more involved in political and social movements, view with concern each respective country's relationship with China. And I end here. Um, Thank you very much and good afternoon.